the staff report so that we would have an update, so that we could talk about the beach sand. And then we said the council recommendations are going to decide what we work on for the year. That's our primary concern is what we're going to be talking about. And I think that certainly an hour will probably not even be sufficient to accomplish that.
No.
So I would
You
move
make
that
motion.
we follow the agenda, the agreed upon agenda from last meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Then
that.
we can discuss discussion.
I, again, go forward and state, I think we should ask the presenters how long their presentation is going to be, because they're here, they brought stuff, and I believe it would be in the spirit of, cooperation to look at it. I don't think if it's a 10-minute presentation, I don't think we're eating into our time. We're spending more time trying to determine the agenda. I would just ask them if we can.
But you see, I beg to differ, because we're setting a terrible, terrible precedent that we can agree on an agenda and then someone, granted, he's supposedly our leader, but he's not even here. And he changes the agenda, and what we do is say, oh, fine, we'll go along with it. I object to that. I don't think we should do it. I think if we do, it's a negative precedent. I think we should stick with our agenda, and if someone wants to address us, then they can follow the same rules that everyone must follow.
The town council approves amendments to their agenda all the time. I don't think we're any different than any other municipal body. If there's an issue with the agenda, that's why you have a vote to approve the agenda. So that's my
Well, having
discussion.
said that, I know specifically that the mayor has not allowed people that have come up, not on the agenda.
Yeah, they come up and
Attempting to present.
they come up in public comment and ask to be put on the agenda. 'Cause
This
that's-
was not put up in public comment. I don't believe.
No, that's what I'm
I
saying.
believe this was given to our staff liaison or the town. I don't know. I don't know the back issue on it. All I know is that it ended up on our agenda. And however it got there, even though it's not anything we voted on the last meeting, again, let's just ask.
Out of order.
I think that there's, the
Any more
place for that
discussion?
is public comment, where this person can approach us during the public comment, and then we can decide whether we want that person to make a presentation either at that time or at a later meeting. But for someone to be put on our agenda for no reason other than they decided to put it on the agenda is not.
I mean,
not
we
what
don't know what the
So-
topic is. We might not be
It's
qualified
not,
to.
we're certainly
talk
not disallowing it. I mean, let me just
No,
repeat that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody is
Follow the
welcome,
rule.
but we have to have some sovereignty to our meetings and to our time.
Mhm.
And not have an out of order change to our agenda when we have, in this case, a couple items on our agenda that are time sensitive. Combined with the again, the indication that our time is reduced, which I'm not sure that's going to be the case. I think the committee's business will take the time the committee business needs.
Well, we have an agenda in front of us. We can accept it, reject it, but the people who are set to make a presentation, they put effort into this also. So you have a written agenda. Why don't we go with it? We've already discussed this for 10 minutes. It could be the entire time that he needs to make that presentation. So we just killed, we didn't productively use our first 10 minutes.
You're entitled to your opinion,
Mhm.
certainly, but I beg to differ with you. I don't beg to differ, I do differ with you. And I don't think we should be subject to the whim of whoever is printing an agenda to just pop in whatever they choose.
The argument isn't what the presentation is or what it is, how they go about it. It's they have to come in to public comment to see if we are willing and wanting to talk about it, right? Is that the,
Well, I mean,
Is
to
that what's up?
alert the advisory board.
right? So then we decide on it. We didn't get a decision on
Then we
this.
can schedule it.
Right.
I mean, it's as simple as that. That's all it takes, so.
Mhm.
Any more
Call the
discussion?
question, please.
Pardon me?
Can we call the question, please?
Yes.
For the motion.
Did we have a second?
I second it.
Split up, so all in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 6-1.
I would like to change my vote. I misunderstood the question. I will vote nay.
Okay, we can do that. 5-2, motion carries. So public comment for 3 minutes.
Oh, wait.
So if I can't make the presentation, you're gonna shut me out of the agenda, which I'm clearly on. Am I allowed to have the 3 minutes?
Of course, yes. You were outside the room. We had said that what we hope that you might be able to do, Mr. Root, is over your 3-minute public comment is actually introduce what you hope, what you are coming here to do, so
Well,
that we can then,
the other thing too, Steve,
so.
that's upsetting about this a little bit, is I didn't come here to cause any kind of controversy or any confrontation.
Would you,
I represent property owners on the south
Sir, can you
end,
state your name?
Ed Root.
Edward.
okay, so,
8150 Estero. I represent the property owners, mostly the property owners on the south end of the island, which is important, and it's important to the MERTF committee. We're not here in an adversarial attitude. We had some information that we wanted to share with you, and we wanted to ask you some questions and for some help to take care of a couple of problems down there. And the problems are growing quickly, and bird season is fast approaching, February the 15th. And so when I spoke to Chad said, I think it's an important enough issue that I will put you on the agenda so that it can be presented and the committee can make a decision. That's all that this is about. That's it. Can I do it in 3 minutes? I don't know. Is it like council? You got 3 public comments before and then public comments at the end?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well then great. Is it open for public comments now?
you're doing, I mean, you're,
Oh, okay.
Your time.
8150 Estero
well,
Boulevard.
I'm sorry, I mean, technically, you're 2.5 minutes into your public comment when you were explaining.
Okay, great. So you're gonna hold me right to the second. All right. We've got a couple of issues on the island. I'll just get right to the point. We've got a couple of issues on the south end of the island that's been brought to my attention by some of the property owners down there. We have a large amount of Australian pines that have started sprouting and have started taking over throughout the beach area.
Mhm.
Some of them are as tall as I am. Some of them are 6 and 7 feet tall. I visited with Rebecca in Lakeland and I spoke with her about it. And she said that they can work to remove them, but they need the town's blessing. That it's actually the town's jurisdiction. So I was going to ask Murph, when you address council Monday, the chairperson, if you would ask the council if they would give Chad permission to work with the FWC in working towards the removal of the Australian pines. The second issue is the sand spurs. The property owners on the south end of the island, where the birds actually nest, for the most part, is every year gets covered in sand spurs. And Murph has been opposed in the past to using any type of herbicide to get rid of the sand spurs. And I understand the concerns with that. And there's been talk of an alternative substance with vinegar or whatever. I spoke with Rebecca about that. The problem with the natural, like using vinegar and that sort of thing, it's acidic and it doesn't biodegrade. And every year when you use it, the soil becomes more and more acidic. And so actually the vinegar would do more damage than an EPA-approved herbicide that biodegrades. The property owners are having a hard time utilizing their property with all these sand spurs because when Bill does the tilling and turns the vegetation under, the sand is still full of these sand spurs. And so the condo owners, they have to wear shoes to go to the beach. And if they don't, they're not aware of it, or the people that come on vacation, they're not aware of it, and they get sand spurs all in their feet before they can get to the beach. So the second thing is, I'd like the chairperson, when they address the council, Monday. There again, Becky said that the FWC would take care of that and they could do the spraying. But the council, it needs to be recommended to the council, and the council needs to approve Chad working in conjunction with the FWC to eradicate the sand spurs. And the only other thing, well, I'm sure I'm over my 3 minutes, so I'll wait till the end of the meeting and I'll take 3 more minutes at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
All right. Again, just for the record, you're welcome, to present, as long as the MERTF Advisory Board can add you to the agenda. That's the point, Mr. Reed, that's it. So thank you very much.
It was an urgent enough, the problem down there with bird season approaching on the 15th, the spraying has to be done before the 15th.
Sure.
It was an urgent enough issue that Chad said, I'll put it on the agenda so that you can present it to them and see if they will present it to council, so the council will agree on these 2 items.
Very good, thank you. Yep. We are, well, we can include that. I can certainly address this in my members' items. We're aware of it. We're aware of it. We've worked with them in the past. There's a Mazifer that can be used and has been allowed to be used, but we can cover that later. Any other public comment? Nope, not seeing any. Let's move along.
We missed, we got it.
What did I miss for the agenda? Oh, approve
Previous
minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
Corrections.
Okay, jump. All right, so the previous meeting minutes are actually printed. That's all right here.
Well, September's we had approved, it just was the
September's
signature
It's been
page.
approved. I can't recall who made the motion to approve, but that the transcriber can determine that. We will adopt it at today's date. 12, these are the 3 weeks that were sent, or the 3 months that were sent.
I just need a copy
Of which one?
of the minutes.
We
Last
have,
month's
they
minutes.
sent the last 3 months minutes because there was a backup and.
I received it by email, but it needs to be printed and handed to us so we can look it over during the meeting and sign it to
No,
give back to staff.
I disagree. Typically, they
Oh.
send it ahead so we can review it.
Oh, I see.
And then the copy that comes is for us to sign and
Oh, I see.
officially. So you're welcome to take a look at it here.
I had some revisions to October's.
Here's November.
No, I read it. I just thought,
Should we do
I think
September 1st and just do them in order?
Yeah, let's do them in order. I would agree. So.
I think we already did September.
Yeah, we already approved those.
He
I
just said he
can't-
didn't sign it.
No, I signed it and
You signed
dropped it off at town hall.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're done with that then.
so
Well, no, she asked some, apparently she didn't get it. I didn't
Oh.
get it. I gave it to the
So
receptionist.
we'll,
She asked
So-
everybody to sign it, didn't she?
yes.
So all you really need to do is sign it and hand it to her.
he
So
already
do we
did.
all have to
Okay.
sign it?
No,
No,
Just
if that's the
you? Okay.
instructions, then that's
Okay,
right.
There you go.
This just be all avoided.
October.
so we're
So-
done with September then.
September minutes were approved, but I didn't receive the sign. Okay, so we're really looking at November's. October minutes need to be approved and signed. Please disregard previous document as there was a correction made by the transcriber and use no attachment. So we need to approve November's.
Yeah, and I have a correction, and I'm glad that they left your name off, because it was like, I had that on mine from last meeting, but we didn't get them in time.
Are we on October or
We're on-
November?
November.
We're going, we're
No,
skipping
we're on October,
I'm sorry, October.
sorry.
Okay, October.
We're on October. Even with the revised edition, there was an omission still that Councilman Beach, and this would be right at the end of current items. Councilman Beach had recommended to Chad that he works with the chairman on establishing the list of topics for meetings. And apparently that's not being done, but that was Councilman Beach had recommended. You can go back and listen to the transcript of that meeting, that Chad worked with Steve.
So where would that,
It's right at the end of current items. It could be page 2, right before members' items and reports.
I just don't see it.
Page 2,
At the end of current items?
Where is the end?
Vote.
it says Chair
yes,
Jones?
and then all of a sudden,
Councilman
Councilman Beach was talking and saying that Chad should get together with you to work on formulating, the agenda and the list of topics.
So it's not in here at all. What you're saying is it was
Yeah, where do we-
omitted and it
It's
should be
omitted.
added.
Where do we place
Yes.
it exactly for the,
It's right at the very end of current items. I mean, it's not there.
but what's above the end of current items? I see members' items and reports, so are you talking about?
on October?
Very good, all right,
That's the key to it.
that's the key to it. Current items, okay, so we need to add,
Councilman Beach
add.
recommended to
Councilman
Chad
Beach.
that he work with you, and he used a word that you had just mentioned earlier about cooperation or something. There was something else in there. Collaboration, cooperation. a
Well,
positive-
they'll need to go back and actually watch and
Yes.
correct it, okay.
If we're unsure of the verbiage, then
No, they'll have to go back and watch it.
then
Yeah.
we should table that and move to the next.
We can't really, because he has to sign them and turn them into the.
What I'm
What I'm saying,
We can approve them as amended.
Yeah.
So any other changes to October? Share. All right.
Now I move to accept October's minutes as amended.
I'll second that. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, motion carries unanimously. So,
You need these signed copies now?
no, there's just one that needs to be signed, just the chair and the vote. All right. Gotta get these extra out of. Let's move to November.
I have two corrections, or two changes I'd like. One is on the first page, under current items of vegetation. It says that I asked that my list of invasive plants be added. And then I just want to make sure that people realize that's the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council's list. It's not my personal list of which plants I like or dislike.
FLEPLC, is that what-
PPC.
PPC,
Pest
FLEPPC, okay.
And the other one is way towards the end under the Merck Award. It says that Chair Johnson did not receive the information from Merck member Rusk for the award. Well, she had sent it to Chad and he had not sent
I
it.
see, okay.
And so I think it should be that you did not receive the information from Chad Chutz for the award.
Okay,
Thank you.
Versus-
Yes, that is correct.
Because you had.
I sent it on October 31st
right.
to
Got it.
Chad Chutz.
Okay. Got it.
I had a change in B, canal dredging. It's really just an addition. Where it says funding, I guess that's assumed that is state funding.
Mhm.
And then the other point that was mentioned was the town was to start radar scans to locate debris for removal from the canals. That's missing from there entirely.
To remove debris. Okay, got it, Phil. Perfect. Any other additions, changes?
Move we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Motion by, excellent. As amended, I suppose that's right now. As amended, good. So maybe just a comment. This is becoming quite a chore, chasing the minutes. We've asked repeatedly to have them set in advance where they were this past month, so we can review them and not receive them the day of the meeting. one copy to share the day of the meeting. So we said that, Austin, I think you're aware of that. And then we can go back to how it was where we would send them in every meeting. Perfect. All right, so I'll set those here for Eva.
Also having printouts of the agenda when we get here too. That's
Right.
something.
Yeah, we've repeatedly asked for that again, just because not everybody has printers based on their current living situations. So can you bring that back again too, Austin? Printed agendas would be absolutely fantastic. That's the only item we need. Okay, so we're out of order, so public comment's been accomplished. And so current items, beach projects. Now this is going to be interesting because our liaison isn't here. He's the project manager for all of the beach projects. So.
Can you run down this staff report real quick so you guys have an update?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, actually, yeah. Sorry.
It's not very long, so I'll just I'll run it down. He had some medical issues he had to deal with, so I was filling in. I was out doing some debris inspections, so bear with me. I'm kind of short today with what's going on. The burn project is expected to be done by January. And we're all aware of what's going on out there. Let me bring up some notes here. Expected the renourishment project and the beach sand truck haul project are both out for bid. If you guys are aware of those projects as well. Staff is permitting Moby mats for the accesses, of our beachfront accesses. We're trying to get ADA accessible. We have Moby mats, which you may or may not be familiar with, that we roll out. Each one of those need to be permitted and kind of planned out as we do it. So we're in the process of that as well, working with the beach crew. The removal of exotic vegetation from environmentally critical zones and the CCCL and the FDEP program has commenced. We have had staff going out and we are categorizing all of the invasive exotic plants that we're coming across on public accesses right now. We're putting together a database of everything that we're finding and then putting a project together to eradicate those. So that's what we have going on thus far. The water quality reports, we have no harmful people readings or anything like that in our waters right now, nor do we have any harmful algae blooms that have been indicated by the FWC. But marine operations staff continues to do debris removals, and that's been our project for the last 2 weeks, is going down and finding debris that the side scans picked up. We've had the island side scan through contractors in the last 2 weeks that gave us over about 100 targets. The divers have been out collecting debris for the last week now, so we've just been busy on clearing the waterways for those. So that's where we're at with our expedition.
Is that both Bayside and Gulfside or just Bayside?
Right now, we're doing Gulf Bayside right now. That's where we did the side scans with our channels and all the navigable ways back here. That's what we're focusing on. As things come up beachfront, staff is responding to those reports as they come in. We have acquired metal detection devices to go ahead and start sweeping areas in the water. What we're focusing on the beachfront is going to be in between the shoal and the beachfront itself where the tide goes down. During low tide events like we have this morning, staff goes out, surveys the area, removes anything. Higher tide events, we'll go out with divers and metal detectors and find anything under the surface and try to remove it. So that's where we're at.
So, Austin, that's primarily in the bay, the channel, or are you actually
In
talking?
the channel right now is what we're focusing on. We do have a couple of reports. That's what I was shooting down here on marker 42. We have an object that's taking out a few props. So we're putting together a project to go recover that. We have a project for the mooring field that's getting it rebuilt. So we've been focusing on all the anchor heads at the mooring field so we can clear the anchor areas so we can put more systems in.
Austin, when you say the channel, how wide is the channel? Is it a boat? Is it 2 boats?
It varies from what area you're in. Coming into the island, you have more like a couple 100 feet wide channel of the high traffic areas coming in under the bridge. The channel's narrowed down and split. Regarding to the federal area, more our town channel, which is pretty narrow as well. But then again, it's all based on the environment on the ground and where the channel could be dredged at that area. Some of the channels are, about 5-6 boats wide, and it comes down to about 2 boats wide at curves and stuff like that.
So it's close in some places. If it's only 2 votes, why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking about narrow, the channel?
It's narrow, yeah.
Yes.
Now, yesterday morning, there were 2 shrimp boats that they must have been waiting to come in. Is that usual, or is that
Oh, they
just?
drop
low-
net. They do shrimp right off the beach as well. They have nets out. So
It was a
typically.
real
No, they
low
were
tide.
up. They
Real
were
low
up.
tide waiting.
Because it was during the day.
Wait,
okay,
They were-
That, they were waiting for
coming
the
in.
tide to shift.
We
And
have-
I was just wondering if it's
Yeah.
because of the debris that they have to be more careful.
No, it's just winter tides right now. We're exposing a lot of land. A lot of islands are appearing in the morning. So earlier mornings is when we're seeing these lower tides. So if it was in the morning, then yeah.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, winter tides. are
Austin,
slow.
how long do you expect the dumpsters to be in the boat ramps?
I just talked to him today. The guy promised me it's gone today. I've been working on that for 4 or 5 weeks. That was a DEP project. I finally got the driver on the phone and said, look, this is what's going on. It needs to be gone 2 weeks ago. And they assured me if it wasn't gone last night, which it was there this morning, I check on it every morning. He promised me today. And I said, if it's not gone today, I'm taking a tow truck and getting it myself. So that's what I'm working on.
Question, when you're talking about the invasive plant removal, does that include what
I was
Mr.
just
Rude
gonna
was
say
saying?
that.
I believe so. We do have people down there looking at Australian pines. Australian pines is the number one thing that we're after right now because the bigger they get, the harder it is to remove them. So Chad's working with some of the staff there to get those documented, identified, so we can go out with staff and eliminate those. We just don't want to take a tree out that doesn't need to be removed. And with the staff that we have, we're trying to get a diagram with GPS coordinates and pictures in a file put up so they can just identify the tree and cut it. We'll probably be marking the trees and stuff like that so people can come out.
If the public has concerns that aren't in those public accesses, like you said specifically, how can they reach out to you or like get you to come to see what they're talking about
Yeah, give me
specifically?
a card, just give me a call.
Yeah,
You know,
because
it's not a big deal at all.
then I was thinking the exact same thing, because that might fix one of those issues where,
Mhm.
I mean, we're here to help the public, so if anybody needs anything, just let us know.
yeah, 'cause I mean, if they're true Australian pines, they're invasive and then that's, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not right.
Austin, are you part of our liaison, our staff liaison?
I work under
Liaison?
Chad, so I just help out whatever he needs. I do have AAC liaison, that is my committee, but this year I just help out occasionally whenever. And I'm sorry I'm short today, I wasn't expecting it when somebody called in, so I just was out.
So I have one other question. On the side scan, are you intending to go in any of the canals at all? Is that? part of the project?
Yeah, all the canals are gonna be side scanned right now. We just did the back bay and the Warrenfield area right now. We have a bid out to do all of the canals.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And my question kind of goes with that, and it's more of a public announcement kind of thing. I have a vacant lot and I went and picked up trash and I put it in a bag and I put horticulture waste out next to the road and it didn't get picked up and I paid my property taxes in November. And so I called up Waste Management and they said, unless you have your trash in front of a residential building, it will not get picked up.
Wow, okay.
And I had stuff that had blown in from other
Wow.
places and trash and litter and I mean, I had a whole bag of trash. So
Yeah,
that's good for people to know out there in Fort Myers Beach that if you have a lot and you don't have a physical building, you have to check with your neighbors or find someone or pay someone to remove your trash.
okay.
It's good.
I'm not.
I know, that's
Saying
it's just like.
anything on that.
Come on,
It's
That was a
gonna
public
blow.
service announcement.
It really was. It's gonna blow into the canal. You're gonna end up saving you time and effort.
Okay. Very good,
Maybe.
very good. Everybody good?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's all we have. Good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Austin Gilchrist, Fort Myers Beach Harbor Master. Sorry.
Who was that guy?
Exactly.
Somebody that actually gives information.
So, thank you, Austin. That was great. So first item on the agenda is the beach projects. And this is gonna be interesting because as I mentioned, the liaison is the project manager for all of the beach projects. I think what we were hoping for here, as he had put it on the agenda, was for an update and sort of transparency on exactly what's coming. I know that the presentations are not updated on the town website. I think the last one that's up there might be from back in February of last year. Wait, no, this year. They're having some updates, which I have copies of, but I'm not sure if everybody's had the opportunity to see any of the presentations to know exactly where these are at. So It makes it very interesting how we can progress on this particular subject. And it's the issue here is it's time sensitive, so it's going out to bid. And so the specifications include what has been presented from staff to town council. But I think there's some questions in there that would be of interest to ask prior to that going to bid in the event that the advisory board feels that there should be some adjustments to it, or at least advise the town council for other considerations on the project.
Are these the three projects? One is the FEMA berm, the other is the state truck haul, and the third is the beach renourishment? Those are the three.
That's exactly right.
What do we mean by the state truck haul? Is that just moving sand?
So this was a request from the town for additional sand for a project, for project purposes. In this case, there are, so this is now, this is where liaison would really helped quite a bit. Let me find my little notes there. I can't find them. I have the presentation here in front of me, but there's, again, many cubic yards of sand.
So why is that different from the FEMA berm?
Well, because the FEMA paid for the berm, and that
It's not the placement of the sand, it's
It's where it's
still,
coming from.
FEMA, is recovery for protection of the island for a 5-year storm, placed a FEMA berm on the island to protect the island post Ian, to protect like I said, the beach from, I think 6 feet was the grade they needed to protect.
and that's what's still going on. Like the sand that they're moving down south of Wyndham now, that's still this FEMA berm.
Any sand you see is the FEMA berm, correct. There was a stoppage because of bird nesting season. I think potentially there were potentially some people that were a hard no that came back and said, maybe it would be a good idea after Dahlia flooded them. And so and was a change order recently for additional berm sand due to losses.
That's what I was going to ask. Are any of those places that got some of this sand originally getting more because of what was washed away?
Well, what's interesting is
Or is it just a one-time thing, you get it once?
Well, I saw a section of the beach that was there was an existing berm that was topped off, which I had some questions about. How do you get your berm topped off? Or is that selective? Was that convenient? Or because a lot of people lost their berm sand with the Dahlia, so that was a question I'd have. And
Right.
Austin, are you
Austin, do you
familiar
know?
at all with the project?
You don't know.
So that was a question that I had on the FEMA berm project. And that's really maybe the only one I had for that. And that's the emergency berm.
And that's going to continue all the way to the south end of the island?
I believe so. I think they did, like I said, the bird, the area that was halted for purposes of the bird sanctuary, or the nesting beach. Actually, let me see here.
Will they get sand also?
Leonardo South, maybe, berm, category G.
They're dropping sand this morning when I came by at Island's End.
Okay, so they are going down pretty far then.
Yeah. So, for instance, behind, I think Stair Beach and Tennis, that area is south, basically. I think even down all the way down to the far south end, there's some eligible areas that still receive.
And why are they dropping that sand at Newton and then trucking it down? Why don't they drop it at Wyndham or further? You can't answer that.
I don't know that
Right.
answer, yeah. It's a staging
seems like a
area, it's
lot.
public area.
Yeah, they just
It's,
could have dropped it closer because they originally had a massive amount of sand at Wyndham,
mhm.
but they chose not to do that this time. I'm just wondering why.
Yeah, it could be access. I have no idea.
there must
I have
be a
no
reason.
idea. But one thing that was interesting is when they did the change order, so there was a, let me find it here. I think this is it here. No, this is actually it here. So they did it, they requested more sand, as I mentioned, I think due to, that and the agenda pack, that there was a narrative that they used to procure more sand for FEMA. And some of it had to do with there was loss to wind and I don't know.
Well, I think
Quite a
Adelia
bit.
moved a lot of it.
Yeah. But one thing that was in here is that and I'm not sure if this is the permit from FEMA, the requirements, or the agreement, but on the agreement, it says the town will install native dune vegetation in a 10-foot wide strip along the emergency berms as required by the town's comprehensive plan and land development code, policy 5-D-1, 2 little small i's, which states sand dunes should be protected and recreated wherever they have been removed. Native dune plants should be protected and non-native exotics removed. Policy 6E-3, which states, quote unquote, the town will implement the following measures to promote the restoration of beach and dune systems, initiate a program to recreate a dune line and plant appropriate vegetation, such as sea oats wherever sand dunes have been destroyed. So I had questions about how that was actually gonna manifest itself. Is there in fact gonna be a 10-foot wide dune on the entire emergency berm? And is in fact that a requirement from FEMA as part of the contract? And if so, how is that going to be done? Because a lot of that sand was placed, I think, for the emergency berm without easements. So does the homeowner have the wherewithal to say, I don't want it? And if that was the case, is that a problem with our agreement with FEMA? That's the question. I mean, one of the questions I had. And again, I may be way off, but I mean, that's my understanding.
I'm not familiar with any sand going on private property that did not have an easement signed. So,
Well, as of August, which was after the emergency berm sand was placed, as of August, I don't know, August 25th, I think, at the town council meeting, they had, to that date, they only had 48% of the property.
well, no, but your statement was sand was placed on property without easements.
So okay.
And I don't believe that occurred. I'm pretty certain that an easement was signed on any property that required an easement prior to the sand going on the property.
For the emergency berm.
Correct.
So I guess my point is that 48% of the property owners have signed easements as of August. Again, that could be updated, but that was prior, that was since the emergency berm. So in your estimation, is under 50% of the island receive emergency berm?
I have no idea.
Right, well,
All I know is that most of the beach property is in front of condominiums. Most of the condominium presidents that I've talked to that have beachfront property either signed it or did not sign it. The ones that did not sign it, to my knowledge, did not receive any sand. So as far as I know, and the information provided to me, there was no sand brought on beachfront property without an easement being signed, because I had numerous conversations with Chad prior to this.
So the homeowners, you're speaking for the homeowners as well?
I'm talking just for the condominium.
Okay, I mean, right, that's okay.
And there's a lot of them along the beach, and we were all approached by Chad. Some signed, some did not. Those that did not sign it did not receive sand, to my knowledge.
I was told by a town council person that essentially it moved forward that you received sand unless you got a hard no. That's exactly the words, a hard no, which
I
means
can
that.
only reiterate what Dave has said. The rule was, if you want sand, sign the easement.
Of course,
If you
that's
didn't
the rule, yeah.
and I know of no exceptions to that.
Do you know, again, can you speak for all the property owners or just the condos again, or?
I'm speaking of my condo, the one immediately to my left, and the one up the street.
Okay.
We're all in the south end.
Without the answers
So this
from
is
Chad.
speculative though, I mean, that's. we don't
Right.
need it.
Without the-
That's why we needed to.
That's why
to
we
have
have
this,
Chad.
yeah.
Without his answers, we can't really make
Well,
any
let's table that.
decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just making, again, I think all we can do is make observations of what's going on, and now we don't have the answers. And so it's difficult, we couldn't, it's gonna be difficult to try to advise council. if
Yeah, we
there's some
certainly been
things that we
handicapped.
find to be important.
But I would like to say that just from my morning observations, 48% isn't even half. And I would say more than half of the properties I've seen did receive that emergency dune. But then again, I don't travel the whole beach.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
it could
mean,
be that I'm not looking at a representative area, but I'm going from Wyndham all the way up to Connecticut.
Yeah, it was 48%
And
in
it's
August
certainly more than half.
of 2020.
Is it something we could write him an email, like question 1, we need an answer, question 2,
think-
we need an answer?
I think that would be the most expedient way is for Chairman Johnson to outline some of the questions that he has, forward it to Chad, and have Chad respond in writing. That way we're not dealing with he said, she said, I observed, you observed,
Sure.
I heard, they heard. Let's have some pointed questions, send them to Chad, and ask Chad to have them ready for the next meeting, rather than going through all of the innuendo and anecdotal information that we all have, and give Chad a chance to respond in writing. That way, we've got it in writing, we can look at it, and we can, when Chad's at the next meeting, we can say, here's what he's provided, rather than going through line by line saying, well, I heard this, or he told me that. You know, I can only give you information that I've received from the people that I've talked to on this matter. I don't speak for the beach. I don't speak for the condominiums. I am just echoing what I have heard from the people that have called me up. So I think that's our best course, in my opinion. That's our best course, is to outline some questions. And if you have them, Chairman Johnson, that would be a very good course of action, is to outline them and send them to Chad.
That'll be number 1.
It does seem like a difficult way to get answers from our liaison, that we have to submit them in writing.
I heard he's out sick. We're having
And
that issue.
I understand for this particular meeting,
Okay.
but this is not the first meeting that we've been treated this way.
Well, I don't think it's fair for someone to come into a meeting and have questions that he's not prepared to answer. If you have questions, have some questions lined up and send it to him and say, we'd like to discuss these questions. Boom, boom, boom. If you ask me questions, I'd like to have them ahead of time so I could do the research and prepare for them. That's just common sense.
You don't think
Well,
it's sufficient to put an item on the agenda, that we need to specify exactly what parts of an item need to be addressed?
I think
That's what you're saying. Be
If you're going
specific.
to put it on the agenda, specify what parts you want to discuss. You can actually put questions down. I don't think just you can say beach renourishment, that encompasses an enormous project.
Mhm.
You know, and you can't be expected to have every nuance. I go to a board meeting, people ask me, what do you know about this thing? And I say, boy, I don't know, but I will find out and get back to you. It's no different than that.
Well, once again, I differ, it is different, but anyway.
Discuss, I mean, are we gonna do that individually? Everybody writes their questions and submit it? I mean, the purpose of the advisory board is to discuss the issue and find out. It's more of a fact-finding mission. So sometimes the questions aren't.
We don't know what they're gonna be.
Yeah, we don't know what they'll be, I suppose. I mean, to your point. but
In this case, we do, that's why.
Yeah, so the point is, I understand exactly what you're saying, and in this situation where he's not here, that's the only thing we can do. So I would do that, but also there were some questions from last meeting on the subject that were already asked that he wasn't able to, and he said he'd get back to us, so I'll include those as well. If you guys agree with that.
Yeah, I just think we're not gonna get anywhere on this without the
Well, I
answers,
mean,
you know.
That's speculative again. We
Right.
just need to, the fact that it's a formality and it's written would be helpful, I think. So-
I mean, as an advisory committee, we don't have those answers, we can't advise, so we can't really move
Well,
forward.
shall we right now come up with a question?
You
The issue
have
is
the opportunity, Chairman Johnson, in front of the town council with staff there and with the entire town to say, these questions were brought up and we're trying to get some answers from them. That's,
Of course, what I would provide then our recommendations based on the answers to those questions versus we can't get we can't get answers, but the idea is that we do get answers. So,
Well, why don't we today each go around the table, and if you have a question that we would like the chair to present to our town council and to our staff liaison, we can do that here and now.
We could start on it, but I don't know that it would be complete because
That's
we
okay.
might,
okay.
I don't think presenting a town council and a staff liaison at the same time are
No.
questions. I mean, the idea of the advisory board is that we come as a group to some type of determination and make a recommendation. All we can do is, we're not an inquiry board. We provide, all we can do is provide recommendations and advice, and it can be taken or not taken. It's as simple as, that's all we can do. So I would suggest that we look at the 3 projects and come up with a list of questions, and the chair will provide those to the liaison. Is that agreeable?
Yeah.
I mean, for this item, because it is, like I said, I think the truck haul sand project is time sensitive.
Yeah.
And that it's going out to bid here in the next, I think that was a question to him. When was it going out, and do we still have time? Because he was leaving at that point, our meeting. So I'd asked if it was, is there still time for us to discuss it next meeting? And the answer was yes, because it hasn't gone out to bid. So, do you know, Austin?
He's gone.
He's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
No, he doesn't.
No, I mean, no, Austin's great. That's not the question. So I'll just, let's go through let's continue to progress and come up with our questions. I'll take notes and I'll send them with a copy, of course, to the rest of the MERTF group, and we'll await the answers to those. Does that sound reasonable?
It's fine.
Everyone's agreeable to that?
sure.
So the first one is really about planting the berm. 2 was there placement without formal easements of the emergency berm, right?
Right.
And with the vegetation, are the owners still gonna get the option of the 3 choices?
So 3 would be, if not, are they required to accept the dune plants?
And when,
I mean, you understand that, right? It would.
yeah, when does the planting happen? In the spring?
I'm not sure.
So if I recall at maybe 5 months ago when the emergency berm was discussed, I believe I recall Chad saying that they weren't going to plant until after the renourishment
Right.
was done.
Mhm.
So I don't know whose decision that was, whether that was FEMA's decision, the town's decision. I'm
May
not
have been
sure.
our coastal engineer.
Oh, that's
However, I think that that brings up another point, is that with the renourishment, I mean, again, we're skipping ahead. I guess I was going to go
Mhm.
emergency sand, but they tie together, truck haul and then the renourishment. Is with the renourishment, a requirement to receive state sand is to put in a dune that's 75% the width of your lot. You can decide where it's at. I think that's come up before at town council. Will they have the selection of where it goes? And we looked at the managed beach zone. We approved the managed beach zone plan. It was actually introduced by Keith Laconin in 2015 or the previous renourishment for the north end. And it was designed by them and permitted by the DEP as a requirement to get the sand, because it's state sand, that they would have to put in like I said, a dune on their property, a frontal dune, that's 75% the width of the property. So how do those two match? This one says that it has to be along the entire berm. And I think with the beach renourishment, you could choose where it's at. So I think it's important for property owners and the community to understand how all these pieces fit.
Yeah, the more clarification, the better,
Yeah,
sure.
again, I'm not a beachfront owner either, but I'm certainly a member of the community. And I think, again, that not to get ahead of ourselves, but there's other items on our initiative list about what the dunes will help with regards to storage of equipment and things like that for chairs and things like that for during let's say turtle season, when it's required to be, either up over the seawall or behind a dune. Again, not to get ahead of myself, but again, what are the answers to those? Because again, there's conflicting documents, and I know it's a dynamic process, and they're merging sort of these three together, but still, they're very specific rules and regulations for FEMA emergency berm sand, truck haul sand, which is the state, and of course, renourishment is a combination of all, but the majority of it's state taxpayer sand. So in every situation, it's state tax, it's taxpayer paid sand. National for the FEMA, obviously, and then state for the other two projects. And in return, typically, they have requirements. So what are those requirements? And as a town, doing the right thing, we don't want to be labeled as bad actors, so. So anyway, that's, any other issues on the emergency berm? Any other questions? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, two things, and one is I'm really concerned about the areas where the escarpments are dangerous to our community and to the people that are visiting our island. And for example, on Miramar Street, there's it's probably 12 feet deep escarpment that butts up against the county road. And is somebody's property, and
Clarification, escarpment or a scour?
or scour.
Scour. Perpendicular. Okay.
Scour, sorry. And what are we gonna, it's been over a year. They did put out cones to prevent, but that's not gonna really prevent a car from going into it, or a child falling into it, or an animal. It's dangerous, and
Is it private property?
Yeah, that was my question.
well, it's on private property. However, it's from the road to the private property. So you would think that
Right away?
it's right that there would be a right of way to make sure. So I just don't understand why the sand hasn't been
Well, I mean,
filled.
it's a great segue into the next project, which is the truck haul sand project. I mean, that truck haul sand project is to repair or improve the accesses first and foremost. A lot of them are going to be used for putting
And
ADA.
this is a beach access, by the way. It's a public beach access.
Right, I think that was actually talked about last meeting, and that it's ideal because in some cases they're looking for help from the homeowners on either side, because as we had discussed earlier at a MERTF meeting, how are the accesses going to work with the berm? And the answer is that they're actually going to be built up to a 1 to 20 grade to the berm and then slowly back down at a 1 to 20 grade. But in some accesses, if they're narrow, if you add sand that high, it's going to slough off, for better, lack of a better term, into the neighboring properties. So they have to coordinate with the neighboring properties, and it sounds like that is one of them. But also, as part of the truck haul project, there are, I think it's proposals to fill scours on private property. And I don't know, I had some sort of questions about that as to how those were selected. Were other property owners contacted? I think you had mentioned in another meeting that if there's sand, you've been asked, a million times, do you want sand? But again, I think that's based on, your group or the people that you speak with. But have on the far north end, have they been contacted? Or again, I hate to use geography also, that gets exciting, creates excitement. But on the other end of anywhere has that been surveyed on the entire beach? Because, there's well over $1 million, I think, of state funded taxpayer sand coming to this island. And how is it being distributed? Because right now, a lot of that, they're filling also scours in the 5,000 block. And the question is that going to be placed, the scours, I don't know if they're inside the dunes, but is that going to be placed on top of these, the remaining vegetation? Or is that going to be, I'll write that down. I'm just,
Yeah.
Well,
where is that actually going to be placed?
And
There's
Jennifer brought
maps,
up a
but
question last meeting. You brought it
every
up last
prop,
week, and just
I'm
say-
sorry.
No,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If you may, that's actually a really good point. I did ask this question of Chad and
I remember.
he didn't know, and I believe we asked for that information. So even when he's here and we're asking these questions, we're still not getting them, even not in, but so I agree that putting it in writing
Well, and
is
the issue
maybe
is
the way to go.
every beachfront property on this island is unique unto itself. Some have an erosion control line, some are in a managed beach zone, some are neither.
Mhm.
So anytime you come out and ask a question and say, well, what's happening here on the 5,000 block or the 4,000 block, unless you specifically are looking at an address on the north or central or south end of the island, each property on the beach is unique. And where we have no erosion control line on the 6,000 block and going all the way down to Island's End, there are other places up north where the erosion control line is right at the boundary edge between sand and green. So every property is different. You can't ask someone a question without identifying what is happening on that specific property, because they all have different answers.
Well, I mean, just for the sake of people listening, I mean, the erosion control line runs from Bowders Point to Flamingo, is it Flamingo or Lanark? I think it's Lanark. Lanark, yeah, I mean, so that's fair to say that everything north of that has a no erosion control line, everything south of that does not. Is that
But-
correct?
Well, to
And
my
it
knowledge,
varies-
yes.
It varies based on where, its proximity to the property or on the beach. In some
And
cases,
the
it's
mean
in the
high
center.
water.
Yeah, well, again, the erosion control line doesn't really have anything to do with the mean high water line.
But the mean high water line moves.
Sure.
And the area of the beach between the ECL and the mean high water line can expand
Sure,
from the time that the line is, and that expansion all becomes part of
state property.
state property.
Of course, yeah.
So everything behind landward of the ECL. So
Yeah.
as I said, every property is different. So the dune may be right on the ECL line for this property and subject to everything, and the next property 4 doors down or 4 blocks down may not have an ECL. So it's, again, unless you're sitting there line by line, property by property, you can't have a cookie cutter
If it-
answer.
But all that does is identify what's private, what's state line. That's all that, I mean, that's all that does. And the truck haul project, doesn't necessarily take that into account.
Isn't there a map?
Yeah, there's maps on the presentation and everything too, sure,
But-
about where it's going, but it's, they're not very detailed. So for instance, I mean, you don't have the benefit of seeing this, but it shows additional, here's a berm segment that's going right through, vegetation. So is that actually the intention?
Rose, did you want to say something?
Well, I want to say that you specifically named the street in your question last month. So if he was here today or had given information to Austin, you would have your answer.
And it's also on record, I mean, we're being videoed, so,
Mhm.
putting things in writing, I understand it's a
You're one more
good
step.
way, but we're on record, we're in a public forum, and I think our answers aren't being met even in a public, meeting.
Well, I wonder if he can give us some of these answers. Is there somewhere that the city could send us to get these answers on our own? He's not the only one that can answer these, I'm sure. So I wonder if there's somewhere that we can look this out on our own. Not saying we should, but I'm just saying for lack of time for that, like we can do the research. We're able, just give us the tools that we can. If you can't be here,
I guess my question was, is the map have specific information with addresses, whether they signed the easement?
Well, the point, I think, with with the truck stand haul project, I'm not sure if easements are being required. They must, right, because they have to enter the property if it's private property to place them.
It's another question.
So that's, I mean, that's another question.
So
But also, so if I was to continue here, they have, like I said, they're doing the scours on the, at the priority accesses, 20, 21, 22, 24, 27, 30, 32, 33, 34, 36, whatever. I don't know what your access number is, but.
But not scours in front of private homes.
Well, again, I don't know how that was decided upon. That's the big question, because right now there's additional berm segments that are going on. So there's an additional berm segment on the north end. So I think they're adding state sand to berm segments that did not qualify to receive emergency berm sand. So, and it's on private property. So there's state, land going to add berm sand on private property. And I'm not sure, again, how is that allocated? I think so is it a possibility that, is it a better use of that sand for the upland owners in the community to actually top off the emergency berm, if that's even an option? I think, I don't know, is that once the FEMA berm is placed, are you not allowed to touch it? I don't think that could possibly be true, because it's the half that's gone anyway. But right now, the island is not secured for another 5-year storm right now, right? After Dahlia, it wiped out a lot of the berm. So so a big question is how did the decision-making and the prioritization occur for the use of this taxpayer extra sand that's coming? And it does actually require easements from the upland owners. So that's a question.
And when will the scours that now exist between the emergency berm and the property owners, when will they be addressed? Or is that up to the,
Well, now there's additional here.
can they just pull that emergency sand and fill it in?
I think, yeah. I mean, there are scour fills, holes, low elevations that are filled with water. So right now, there's paths scoured behind berms. I'm looking at the present, literally the presentation here. But also on the beach in front of the berm in certain spots, 5,000, 6,000 block. Also, Carlos Point is expected to get quite a bit of state sand too.
is this on the town's website?
It's not. It was presented at town
Can
council
you
meeting.
explain for everyone where you got that information?
This was presented August 21st, 2023, Beach Projects presentation, town council meeting, and Michael Poth presented it, who's our coastal engineering
I mean, is that
consultant.
made
What's that
public
date
record?
again?
It's a public record, of course it is, but the presentation itself was never provided, so these are screenshots. I mean, what I did is just took screenshots of the slides.
And when was that presentation, August?
August 21st. And it's detailed. I
Lots
mean,
of questions.
So, but there's also this consideration of, again, so if you look at the concept of the beach renourishment, which I don't want to get into quite yet, but when you receive state sand, the taxpayer has to get something in return to avoid having to continue to pay for sand. I mean, there's got to be some resilience. So in the case of the renourishment, they require a berm, I should say a dune. Not only that, but if there wasn't an ECL line, to Dave's point, and you were renourishing the beach and extending it from the mean high water line, then the beach, that land then becomes, that accretion then becomes the ownership of the state. State's paying for the sand. It didn't exist before they placed it, now it exists, it's state property. So with the truck haul sand project, to me, none of this applies. It doesn't matter. There's nothing, outside of taking care of private property, there's no return for the taxpayer. So my question is then all the constituents that live on the beach should have access, I think, to the improvement of their property as well. And I'm just asking, so my question is how, was there prioritization in the decision making, and was it shared with the entire community? Because that's, in some ways, we do have a fiduciary responsibility, when using state assets as a government advisory board, so. So these are just observations more than anything and questions, not mischievous questions or anything like that. It's just, I don't know the answer. It's not a rhetorical question. I don't know. So how was it done? And again, without the project manager here, it's difficult to get those. So having said that, we can't really go into the details, I don't think, without just wasting time. Not wasting time, but writing all of this up. Maybe we voice our questions and ask the liaison to watch the meeting and respond to them. That might be an easier way on my hand, Dave. So let's just go ahead and move on to the renourishment project. I'm not sure I really have any comments on that besides you've had, basically this was placed on the agenda originally by the project manager himself. So I guess it was more of an update to us as well. But yeah, here we go right here. It was actually easement status as of August 4th, 2023. There was 112 yeses out of a total of 231. There was 12 expected, 26 no's, and 81 no responses. And so to my point earlier, if there wasn't a no response, that's not having received a hard no. So that was moved forward on. So potentially, is there 86 properties or 81 properties that there may be an issue with, planting the berm? And again, it's,
Is there a time frame around when they need answers, when things are being done?
I don't know.
They keep moving it back.
It's bureaucratic, it's government, it's FDAM. And then again, maybe it's possible I don't understand, what that the document is that's reading it, but it's a FEMA document signed by FEMA people, so.
I see, what are their color codes? The color codes are who,
They went through and actually showed who was, there's a map here that shows who actually has easements, who doesn't, which one is expected, which one is, those 4 categories. Yes, expected,
so which color
No.
is yes?
and hard no. Yes is blue,
And hard no is,
yellow.
and what is the pink?
No.
No.
It's a hard no. Did I say that wrong? Yeah, I think, anyway, it doesn't help anybody sitting in the room,
Right.
but there's maps here that show exactly what the status was as of August for the August for the entire island. So I was hoping to find out also, has this been updated and what the numbers are? Are we getting closer? Because in a lot of cases, if you want sand and you have a hard no on both sides of you, they won't do your property. And again, that's their prerogative not to take it, of course. But for the sake of upland owners and, the scouring that'll occur, it's in the benefit, I think, of the community to find as many people that would be willing to do it. So, but even those properties, those all have, particular map I'm looking at has an ECL line. So the question is how much sand will they place from the ECL line to the water? And again, that's going to create, lakes behind the renourishment. And how is that going to be handled? And what are the rules going forward as to how many? And I know it's dynamic because we're still months away from the renourishment, and they're still contacting people. As far as I know, are they still? And those are some of the questions I had. So again, I think to continue is fruitless because we don't really have answers. But what I'll do is I'll actually send the information I have. Now that Becky Voss attended our meeting and said that we could actually send things to each other.
Mhm.
Can you send that
Data.
presentation that you have?
I will, yeah. Actually, I'll request the actual presentation. It's public record, it's whatever. But these are screenshots. I'm pretty sure the PowerPoints are going to be a lot better, right?
Okay.
You can expand them and look at the source file that's embedded in it.
So
Can you send everyone the link then? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, I'll send this after the meeting, but then I'll actually request the actual presentation that was provided, actually for all the past ones. Because like I said, I went to look for this on the beach projects portion of the website. And the only one that's up there is from February, I think, of 2023.
Okay, so in regards to Miramar Street, I'm now looking at the map, because I also took pictures at the meeting. And it says no response, easement, no response. So that property.
Does it have a berm? You know?
It still has its a dune with vegetation. But I don't
It
believe
still
it
has
has-
a dune, but it never received.
Never received an emergency berm in front of it. And I wonder if she ever even got the information. She hasn't been there since Hurricane Ian. It's
Well, some are, I mean, you can.
They have ways to contact each owner. It's all public record. They've got tax bill mailings that they have to send out.
Right.
So
Well,
it's very easy to find someone unless they passed away.
right. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, trusts and all those types of things and
But you have to send a tax bill.
overseas owners.
You have to send a tax bill somewhere, and that's the address they use if they can't get in touch personally.
Yeah, so essentially, but the 81 or whatever, I just have not answered. They've received it, to your point, and they haven't responded. So I'm sure that number should be lower since August, I hope. But it'd be interesting to see if that was the case and whether this has changed at all. So, I mean, is everybody agreed we ought to just move forward?
Yes.
yes.
So maybe to wrap up this section, I'll send everything I have, and then I'll request better copies or the actual source documents. Does that sound fair?
Perfect.
And maybe that'll prepare us even better for the next meeting if we choose to add that to the agenda. But had the liaison been here, I feel like this section would have probably taken quite a bit of time. To my point about, and also being time sensitive, and that it's the truck haul project's gonna go out for bid. So let's go to the next item here. So the chair update. So this past meeting, as you had directed me to do so, we made a motion to update the town council on the initiative guidance report, as well as to present the recommendation on tree selection. So maybe I'll start with that one. That's the easy one. That was the motion that was approved 7-0. And it was to recommend to the town regarding a grant for the Tree City USA grant that they replace as needed the row palms that were lost in a Hurricane Ian, which was presented by, which was the original plan. But for Old San Carlos Boulevard, replacing it as needed the native sable palms instead of the coconut palms, and then eventually replace the surviving coconut palms with sable palms. So I'm not necessarily cut down a healthy tree just to put another one in. And I believe, yeah, that was agreed upon. I think there was consensus there. I mean, they don't take votes, but there was consensus there that that's how they move forward. And the town manager that was then going to get back to Chad and say, yeah, that's what they want. So having finished that, let's go on to the initiative guidance report. I sent a copy of all this to you. This is sort of what I prepared for the town and for the town council, so they know exactly what we're doing. We try to have as much transparency as possible. The feedback on this, usually I ask them, this is what we're doing. Do you want to amend it, delete some, add some, or prioritize it? As I mentioned earlier, they don't really do a lot with prioritization, but they do give us some of the hot buttons. And one of those was to help facilitate the regreening of the right-of-ways along Estero Boulevard. Apparently, this is Councilor Adderholt had brought up the subject and had suggested that maybe we can come up with a framework for homeowners. Homeowners are just taking the initiative to start to take care of the property, the property that's between the sidewalk and the road on Estero Boulevard. In some cases, it's quite narrow. In some cases, it's wider. But the concerns were what they're planting. I mean, you can't put a tree there. There's sight lines and all those types of good things. So he was hoping we might be able to help with putting a framework together on what they could help us do. Now, my understanding is that was the town's responsibility. I'm not trying to point fingers. I mean, there was, as part of the Estero project, Boulevard project, they received $800,000 to have control over that versus the county managing that, which they probably would have put grass, little strips of grass in there and had to come and weed whip them or mow them, or depending on how wide they were. And I know at the time, the town council had the desire to do something different than that. So they did. And as you know, they had placed the ground cover, at least for a section around Red Coconut, maybe around the bend. Some areas, there's 2 ground covers they planted, is that right, Rose?
And they wanted the Estero Island Garden Club to do some consulting on what to put in. But then there was this thing that was kind of being tabled because some people have talked about making that all concrete, that space for a bike path.
Yeah, that didn't come up.
So then it was kind of like, oh, well, if it becomes a bike path and it's all concrete, then we don't need to be putting in vegetation. So I'm waiting to hear the.
Okay, that's
Final
not, I
version.
had no feedback like that in the
Okay.
meeting. Basically, the request was that we would help. And I had mentioned to them that the garden club had presented to us and also presented to them that they'd be willing to help. So I think they just don't want to get involved with exactly who, how, or what, how it happened. So they're reaching out again and saying, maybe Murph and the garden club need to get back together.
Okay.
And I could have said, well, they remember that's in both. And it's the ideal candidate to bring us
I'm gonna
together.
keep looking at me.
But so,
A lot of pressure.
so that was the update. So that's either something we put on the agenda for the future. I mean, right now is probably not the time to discuss it because it's not on the agenda. That was the feedback. So that was the prioritization as we prioritize this. That's actually on the agenda. And right now it's as needed, or it's ongoing based on what's happening. So the next step here is going to be to prioritize this. So keep that in mind when we do that.
Well, just making one comment on that, I think one of the things that Vice Mayor Adderholt was alluding to is the, I guess, initiative and innovative way some of the people, especially on the north end, were adopting areas
Good point.
and putting their own personal touch into that strip of land. And in fact, there was one very nice couple up on the north end that had literally taken over their right of way and put in stuff, and they got donations from people and put in flowers. And I didn't personally go up and look at it, but I saw some pictures of it. And I think that's kind of the direction he was alluding to, is that, is there a way that the town could encourage people to adopt their area? Now, again, you have to worry about sight lines and what plants go in, so on and so forth. But give them, here's a variety of plants that you can put in, and let your imagination be your guide, and go forward from there. And I think that was at least what I thought was the direction that Vice Mayor Adderholt was saying. Boy, it would be wonderful if we could turn everybody's property into an adopt a right of way thing, and just have an ongoing calliope of plants and just, everything being different and showing the imagination of property owners, much akin to the street signs that everybody painted, and their imagination came out, and everybody said, boy, what a wonderful expression of property owners to to do it. And I think that was the direction he was going for.
Right, and what he's asking for is a framework, like you said, to say, you know, is there height restrict, you know, attempt to choose plants that
Yeah,
have
shrubs or
maximum height.
wild, yeah, ground flowers or,
um,
yeah.
you know, probably natives, don't plant invasives, those types of frameworks, but also he alluded to, you know, maybe.
A list of plants.
Well, he talked about adopting an actual plaques, you know, if somebody wants to donate and things like that. But I think in the end, it's, you have your own space there. We encourage it because then you're gonna be likely to take care of it. It's not the town's responsibility.
Correct.
So it's a win-win, really, and you also
Yeah.
get to express your own, you know, use that space as your own,
And
so.
I've seen that garden on the north end and I've seen people out there,
Yeah, I
the
went
lady
out
out there watering it, recently. So yes, I know. And I've talked to a lot of residents because every other Friday I'm in Times Square doing work pop-up. So, and a lot of residents are hesitant to plant anything right now because they have construction stuff going on. And they know that trucks and, you know, whether they're small little pickups or huge dumpsters or whatever are gonna be driving onto their property and they're concerned that it's just gonna get all torn up. So there's that kind of, let's wait and finish the construction beforehand. Now, where that garden was planted was in front of a condo building, so they had huge driveways and stuff. So I think it's kind of like pick and choose. If something's already finished and established, then those people can go ahead and start planting. If they know there's gonna be a lot of construction traffic, you probably wanna wait a little bit longer,
I
but
mean, we can't make them, but yeah, I mean, that applies, some are
Yeah.
finished, some aren't, so it's, I think, go at your own pace, but.
I mean, I could come up with a list, I don't know if, I can come up with a list of native plants, both ground covers, flowering, and small shrubs that could go anywhere,
Also, people,
This one is your list.
or at least Florida friendly.
also people that stop by the pop-up, we are, we have a very generous coupon, with, some money off of, some plants, native plants.
And we're giving away native
And
plants.
we're giving away native.
I'm gonna halt this and we'll move it toward that agenda item if that's what we.
Yeah.
When we discuss it, okay, so I mean, I just, again, sake of time,
Everything is interconnected.
well, it's, time's always a real challenge, so,
And with that, I have to apologize because I have a conflict at 11:30.
okay, is it,
And I kind of believed, you know, the 1 hour.
11:30, yeah, wow, wow,
A little bit of a,
it's a challenge. Yep.
we'll see you next time.
Okay, Bill, is there any input you want to give on as we prioritize the initiative guidance report? I mean, is there any compelling hot item that,
Out of your list that you had here.
yeah, I mean, is there?
Well, we're not gonna untable the tabled items, right?
I don't know, please,
No, I was talking about this list here.
do you want me to hand it to him?
Which list?
It was the MERF project outline.
That's the initiative list?
All right, I brought this one.
Oh,
This
two
is the
pages.
same thing. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the list.
These are tabled. here.
Oh, I see.
So you're not gonna
I see.
untable
I see
those.
what
They're
you're
all
saying.
tabled.
Right, no, but is there, again, before you left, I wanted to make sure I had your input on whether or not in your absence there's something that you want.
For any member items you wanted to say before you leave, maybe?
No, we can't.
Can't do that yet, okay, sorry.
There's one other update too, as he's looking at that. The other update, and input from town council was just to continue to support, maybe the other prioritization is the beach school cooperation. I can't remember, apparently your memory's better than mine. Dave, do you remember anything besides that, anything we can
No.
continue to do? I gave him the update, basically as it's written and we discussed last meeting, so. So having completed that, let's move on actually to the prioritization of this.
Yeah, and just my quick 2 cents. Beach sand projects, I think, is one, get clarification on that. The environmental critical zone would be 2 and beach raking 3.
Okay.
That would be my top 3 to go after.
Beach projects, yep. Beach sand projects too, yeah. Well, and what was the third one, Bill? I'm sorry.
Beach raking.
Oh, beach raking, okay.
And you had one in here for compromised wastewater lines. Isn't that the?
That's the other input they gave. Yeah, oh yeah, it's on here actually. And they gave us a lot of input on that. They were surprised and wanted us to Potentially, I think Frankie came up with there's federal programs for something else, but then I said, well, there's also not federal, but state programs for septic to sewer. So is there possibly those types of grants that are available? You know, basically, if we want to investigate some of that, because as we discussed, it's a problem,
Certainly.
potentially a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it, and not
All
to be
right.
negative, but the last thing would be, unless they're free, prop guards. Because didn't Voss tell us at one point, don't recommend anything that's gonna cost money?
Who did you say, boss?
Yeah, but
The attorney.
town attorney.
Don't recommend anything that's going to cost money. Is that
I think
from
that
a
was for
legislative
homeowners.
purchase? From a legislative?
No,
reasons, or-
well, that was her directions the first day that, we met. Don't do anything that's gonna cost the homeowners money.
I thought that was when we were creating, new
Yeah, legislation.
ordinances.
I mean, we can't
Yeah,
force
that's-
people to,
That's for the ordinance.
outside of them codifying legislation that would require them to spend money to do something. Anything else is just a
Yeah,
recommendation.
my prop guard idea will not force anyone to do it.
Okay. As long as it's a suggestion.
Yeah, well, each of these obviously need to be discussed.
That's all we
the
can
point.
do is suggest.
Well, that's the point, is these are, it's really about priority. So what's the priority? Because each of those, we've all agreed, are on the list and will be discussed at some point as an agenda item where we can discuss things like, does it cost money and those types of things, so. So, okay, so,
Yeah, sorry to have to run, but, Merry Christmas.
okay, Merry Christmas to you too. Yeah, enjoy, drive safe.
See you next year.
Yes.
Okay, so, so these top three are tabled, I suppose. I mean, if I'm gonna reorder this in a priority, I'll put those to the bottom.
Right.
That leaves beach school cooperation. I'll just read them, beach sand project. So basically, yeah, we'll go start at the bottom here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 items here to prioritize. What would be a administratively convenient way to do this? Does anybody have any ideas? Should we start from the bottom up?
Yeah, in order, yeah.
So we know,
Well, the beach.
We know
renourishment,
beach-
That whole thing is, there's a whole bunch that are related to that, like the beach raping and the beach renourishment and all those. That's kind of like one big chunk in my mind, and sand projects.
yeah, you have a point there about sand projects. You can group them.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
some will touch on others and come.
Yeah, or
Actually,
beach
there's 11 of them.
renourishment and yeah, beach raking, possibly even beach obstructions.
Well, beach
possibly.
renourishment easements, that's another one. I mean, we could have brought that up, I suppose, as part of the projects, because Bill had brought that as a priority.
And
you know, as an
private
item
sand placement.
about trying to decrease the duration. I think that might be a DEP issue, actually. So I don't know. It's to be discussed when that comes up. But let's look at time-sensitive ones, I suppose. The kids are back in school. The truck haul sand's about to be bid out. So beach projects, is that, since we had that discussion today and we know that that's time sensitive, should we put that? Because essentially,
Yes.
the agenda items will include these, starting next meeting. So where's beach projects? Okay, right there on the top, that's number 1, maybe. Beach school cooperation too, should that be number 2?
Yes,
Sure.
Is that reasonable?
Sure.
it's going to be a long-term thing. It should begin.
Right, and it's not, we just have to have the discussion. So should we, the rebuild right town vegetation, should we move that up based on a request from Councilman Adderholt?
Yes, you could do that 3 and it can merge in the mangrove with it.
That's ongoing. So I've got right now, town vegetation is 3. And that specifically, I think, is the framework for this.
Did you send this to Amy Baker?
She has a copy of it.
Oh, she does,
Yep.
okay, so it's
All town
public
council has it,
record?
absolutely.
Okay.
This is sent to town council prior to a presentation by Murph. So they can review it, and it goes to Amy Baker, and it goes to the town manager. So what's left here is really page 2.
Can't mangroves be combined with town vegetation? I mean, it's separate, but not, I mean, it's still vegetation. I can leave it separate.
I'm going to a presentation tomorrow at Rookery Bay on mangroves. So I will come back, I hope, with some information.
And I like the wastewater line things that you had brought that up. That's a serious one.
Would you like to move that up?
You're,
Well, I think
Going
the
to-
issue, well,
when are you going?
we can move that up. A lot of the lines are going to be on private property, so again, unless you're going to find a grant or the town says somebody has to go through and do a percolation test, it's going to be almost impossible in passing any ordinance that forces a percolation test is
Right.
again adding cost to a homeowner.
Right.
So
Yes,
it just becomes one of those, I think we can advise people to have your lines checked and see, because a plumber can do that, they can scope a line.
Sure, that's how they've determined it, yeah, I know my
Yeah,
plumber.
And it's just very easy to do.
Question is, is there, in fact, is there easy money? You know, we've got all these grant writers right now working for the town, right? Because there's quite a bit of funds.
No idea.
So the question is there, let's say, would this fall under septic to sewer? You know, can it be? And if it was, can you actually request that your lines be scoped and be subsidized by a grant? That's the point. I mean, I don't think we're in a position to try to codify legislation to say you have to do it. But I think people know that potentially if they have cast iron, it's leaking into the ground,
But
leaking
it
into the
could be
groundwater.
potentially leaking. It doesn't say it is. It's just, there's a potential depending on age, where it is, time under the salt water, so on
Sure.
and so forth.
Of course, yeah, and you wouldn't know unless it was scoped, and if somebody, if we had, a lot of people would say, yeah, if it doesn't cost me anything, I'd love to do the right thing and scope it, and the problem is your lines are percolating now, here's the free scope, it's gonna cost you $22,000 to replace your sanitary sewer lines up to the.
Well,
Nobody
that's
wants to do
the issue, ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies.
Of course, that's always the problem. So the question, but again, it's just the problem remains is the thing. And if we scream about water quality and we agree that the water is what brings people here and it's the family jewels of this island, it's incumbent on the island to somehow improve that. So, and how's that done? It's not going to be easy, but maybe. We can discuss that when that item comes
Right.
up. So the question is prioritization, again, for the sake of time. So let's actually do this the other way. So we have beach renourishment easements. That can be with literally the beach
Sand project.
sand projects, right? So that's 1B, right? So I'll move that and sort of combine those. I think those could be combined. Yeah, because that's very specific. So that's 1B. I don't know, does it wastewater lines, again, that doesn't mean we accomplish it, we just have a discussion on how to move forward, so. So private sand placement for the 501(c)(3) there, Dave, I think, when is that season start?
Want to see?
No, when is remember when turtle season starts?
April
April.
15th.
So we have a little bit of time on that, is that?
Well, I think funding wise, it's not gonna start until tourists come back, and tourists aren't gonna come back with, probably for another, en masse, for another
Year.
year. So, but the groundwork all has to get laid out prior to that starting in order for it to be successful. Because there's FWC, FDEP,
Oh, yeah,
counties, all kinds of hurdles have to be jumped through,
right.
before you can turn it on and go forward. But they're not insurmountable, and the town has to have a buy-in first and foremost.
Right, so that would be not as time sensitive as maybe some of these others saying.
Not as time sensitive, but if you don't do it now, then it's gonna be like a Sanspur issue for birds, all of a sudden, the next tourist season is here and you keep kicking the can down the road. So I'd say from a priority, it's not high, but I'd like to have it discussed at some point.
It's on the list here, so continuing to look at this, so the EC zone, due to the zoning, all the zoning variances and all the amendments to the land development code and everything, are those two that should be up higher? Should we make mangrove protections? Again, it's a discussion is what it is. Does it result in anything? I'm not sure, but I don't know, mangrove protections for EC zone, Bill had wanted that up in this top 3. Make that 5, 3, or 4 and 5. You okay with that?
Yeah, like
Sure.
Let's face it, we can reorder this based on,
One
things
goes
roll.
right into the other.
Maybe we're taking way too much time on this. 5, so beach raking, the beach obstructions, that's sort of part of the
Yeah, it goes with the-
renourishment,
Right, and beach firm sand, so yeah.
but as a result of it, it's more of a result of it. Compromised wastewater lines, should we actually put that up? From a pollution standpoint, should be up a little higher. And the fact that people have contractors crawling through their house.
I think it's important.
I think it's probably more time sensitive than anything else on here.
Well, some of it's a matter of our discussion, we come up with a plan of action, and then that goes to a
Recommend.
grant writer or something, just say that's all we can do, yeah, I mean, us to do the actual work is not.
No, I
Or
understand.
unless you have a burning desire, which that's happened here, where we've actually gone in and done research and contacted organizations and that sort of thing.
I think our public works director could have a lot of input.
Yeah, I mean, when that's on the agenda, boom, we ask them to attend and put a request out, yeah, excellent point. Make a note on that one. Which there's a change in that, actually. I think our public works, they're gonna go back to hiring.
I think so.
Yeah.
What do you mean, you're gonna outsource
No,
it?
there's no, I mean, I'm not in a position really to comment on it. I don't know for sure, but yeah.
I don't know either.
Yeah, nobody's getting fired.
Oh.
But there may be a change there.
Well, didn't someone say that the base and public works, they were combining or?
Don't know. So we've only got a couple more here. Beach obstructions and beach raking. Private staff placement. Somebody reach out here. So we've got beach obstruction, grooming compliance, that could be on the same meeting. So how about we just order them down here? Beach obstructions is 7, grooming compliance 8, private sand placement 9, and progress 10. Okay, is that good?
Yeah, for
And again-
now, then we can always,
We can always adjust it, yeah, I don't wanna
as long as we
take
haven't
any
left
more
something
time on
out.
this, yeah. If anything, again, the top 5 are the important ones, because those are always gonna be the active ones as we create the next meeting agenda, so. Going back to the agenda, then we have, so that's that. And so.
Do we have to vote on those priorities or?
So we had on here the beautification of right of ways that we left as part of the motion to maintain, to adjust the agenda. So with the time remaining, 15 minutes, you think we've got time to jump into that?
I think we could set a time cap for it, maybe leave it to see, get a feel
Well,
about it.
Yeah, okay, let's do it then. So, Rose, you said that you would be willing to, so the issue is again, what do we call that area? The easement, the roadway easements, is that a good way? Because we spent 20 minutes one meeting talking about whether it's called a parking strip or
We know what you
a
mean.
parkway, yeah, so.
Easement sounds good.
Yeah, so the road easement, beautification plan, how's that framework?
Great.
So what are the elements that need to go into that?
A list of plans that would be
Recommended?
recommended, yes.
Okay, list of
Probably
recommended
native
plans.
with possibly a few Florida-friendly plants mixed in that are beach-friendly.
Yeah, so it'll be successful, beach friendly, and then if somebody wants to go beyond that recommended list, what would be the recommendations?
They could go on the website, they can contact the local Estero Island Garden Club, or they could look at all the information on the website already from the University of Florida IFAS group.
Okay, website, but then also sort of a hard, no invasives, please. Right now, it's not, it's legal to do it, but that's not the general direction.
I believe Lee County has an invasive species list.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. We actually,
Yes.
we have.
We created the top 10 that Chad had wanted us to focus on several years ago. So there's a list and there's actually a PowerPoint that has photos of them and what they are.
So again, the point of clarification is we have an invasive species list, but it only applies
Targeted,
to commercial multi-use properties.
and that's.
One of the objectives of this vegetation management was to extend it to residential. I think it was
And
really the main thing in that whole
And to
vegetation ordinance.
update it because it doesn't include the list from the Florida Exotic Pest Plant
It's a
Council.
static list, so it's.
It's outdated
It needs to be
and-
modernized, yeah, so that's what we attempted to do in that recommendation for our town ordinance. So having said that, the right of way is not residential, is it? It's town owned, so is the town, I mean, we don't have to get into the weeds here, are we in agreement that it should include
right,
no plant bases?
Let people take ownership, it's the best way to do it.
Well, again, if they're going to take ownership, I don't want to make it so controlling that it stifles their innovative ability to take it over.
Sure.
That's the thing.
Right, there will be lots and lots of plants. I mean, there are hundreds of plants that are
Right,
native and
right.
Florida
That's-
friendly.
that's-
I honestly don't think anybody's gonna insist on putting, mixing petunias in there, on their parkway, so. And again, it's a framework, it's not a law, this is as far as, I see it, right, this is a framework to guide people that wanna do it.
And people will go to some of the big box stores and buy plants that are very pretty and put them in. And as soon as it doesn't rain and they can't water every single day, or
They're gonna
there's
die.
any sort of saltwater flooding, they'll die because they're not Florida friendly. But, that is always an option as well.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
And then if they don't take care of it, then the town goes in and puts down whatever grass or whatever they're doing.
No, that's right.
And it's done, in the meantime,
But we're trying not to do that because it wastes water. I mean, you use a lot of water to maintain plants that are not Florida friendly. So it's a win-win for the owner.
Right.
They get plants that are durable and they get plants that don't cost as much in terms of the long haul of watering. So
All right, so
I'll generate a list.
So we have the list, recommended plants that are based on beach appropriate or ability to survive on a beach. If they choose to do something else, there's resources on the website, and we'd ask that they don't plant invasive species.
Right.
So 2 would be, I mean, then there's not really, well, there has to be some type of height restriction, right? I mean, based on the recommended plans, that's
Right,
already
and there's
taken
that-
care of. But if they decide to go off of that list, then they should probably provide a height, right?
Sure,
So what height should that,
probably 15 feet or whatever. I'll check with the town.
15 feet?
No.
No,
No, it's gotta be,
tall?
Well, you're saying, yeah. just
Right next to the road?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, that would be, they can get shrubs that are, that they can maintain at 4, 5, or 6 feet if they want.
Well, I think
privacy, but-
it's the safety issues. You're backing out of your driveway. You're gonna be
Oh, yeah.
passing through those. So what's the,
I'd say 3 feet.
I would say it's less than a foot. I mean,
I mean,
a foot or
And we could
less.
do that, we could do all ground covers and
that's what I
wildflowers
say also.
and that
I mean,
would
do you
be
know,
great.
having not seen the north end, I mean, are those, what,
They had shrubs down there, like cocoa palms,
Or
and
cocoa
they had things, but then you need to make sure those people constantly are trimming them,
Of
because
course, they have to
truly
maintain them.
that plant can get 15 feet tall, so it's one of those things too, then you have to, but if we just did wildflowers and ground covers, we wouldn't have to worry about people pruning
Mhm.
the
Right.
bushes.
Yeah, you can't obstruct visibility.
So the recommendation is to.
Well, the town's always been pruning them.
Right, it's the town's responsibility, so I think it would benefit the town maybe if they didn't have to maintain those.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
I mean,
Okay.
That's why you have an adopt your right of way in front of your building. And say, I'm gonna take care of it, I'll trim it, I'll water it, so on and so forth, it's mine. And
so I'll put in here an so there's a height restriction unless you adopt it and agree to then maintain the height.
well, there's a height restriction, there's gotta be some type of height restriction, because if it gets too tall, you can't see oncoming traffic at the end of your
Right,
drive.
exactly, right.
Or people coming down the bike lane or whatever. So and again, I don't know what it is, I'm just speculating that anything beyond a foot might get into the danger zone, or possibly 2 feet.
We'll just do
There's a public safety director,
Ground covers.
And geared towards
Recovery.
pollinator friendly.
there's a public
Yeah.
safety director that can tell us what that is. But again, the more innovative you can allow people to be, I think the more susceptible they are going to be to adopting the property per se.
And who are we
Because-
talking about adopting the properties? The actual property owners or groups or?
Well,
I think-
any of the above, I
I
think.
think the property owners first would, I mean, we have an extensive section from one end to the other. And,
Yeah, what do you think your HOA is gonna do? Move forward and say, yeah, we'd like to do what
I
we want?
don't know, I'd have to bring it in front of the board.
Of course,
You know, I'm not king of the world
You're
there.
so influential though, Dave. What, what do you know your property owners?
It's-
You think that
If,
like that?
I think if we could carry our landscaping theme out to the road, I think it would be kind of cool for our property, given the fact we've got 325 feet or 600 and some feet of Estero Boulevard there. But again, that cost is borne by the homeowners, and I can't speak for them. I'd have to throw it in front of the board, get some feedback back, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think it would be a very nice differentiation of
Sure, personalization of. your-
personalization of our property, if we could do it. Now, if it comes out and they say, well, no, you can do this, but you can't do that, or so on and so forth, and you take that up and down the Estero Boulevard, you're gonna run into a lot of people that say, okay, never mind, you guys take care of it.
Sure,
So-
there will be those, yeah.
And so that's my whole thing. I think you'll get a lot of buy-in if people can look at it and say, sure, I'd like to carry this out to and roll my entire landscaping plan out to Estero Boulevard. I think it'd be kind of neat. It kind of separates your property out. It gives you some individuality, and people drive by. All you have to do is go up and down Bonita Beach Road and look at the different landscaping that's on all of the properties that's starting to go in. And some of it is breathtaking. It costs a hell of a lot of money, but it's breathtaking.
Mhm.
But, and I just think that it's like the street signs. It gives everybody a little bit of,
Ability to be unique and to.
a little bit of individuality on the
Yes.
island.
So, I mean, to your point, actually, the side streets, I mean, everybody's got right of ways. I mean, I probably have 10 feet. But if you look, everybody sort of absorbs that as their front yard anyway, and they're all landscaping anyway. So it's a little bit the same concept, but there's no sidewalks is the difference. So it's easy to do that. Your property or the Island Winds actually has a pretty good easement there, right? It's a pretty large piece versus center of the island where, you know,
There's
there's
not a
a
lot.
foot and a half, or as you progress down, it gets a little bit wider, and as you go north, it gets just a little bit wider, but so it's different for each. It'd be quite easy for a mid-island person to say, yeah, I've got a, 80-foot strip or 60-foot strip, whatever the width of their house is, by 2 feet. That's gonna be a flower garden, it's gonna be a little bit of ground cover. But you have 200, I mean, I have no idea how wide your property is by, your easements, is it 10 feet, is it 20 feet?
I
It's
think,
quite large.
I think there's probably a 4 or 5 foot easement between the sidewalk and the Stara Boulevard.
5 feet, okay. I
And
think
it-
further south even, it gets to even
It
larger.
gets even larger, so, but but that's what I'm saying, there's,
Sure.
the south end of the island is graced with a lot more easement space
Mhm.
between the sidewalk and the Stara Boulevard, where you get by the Red Coconut, and it's measured in inches, they barely have room for
Mhm.
a post office.
Because in those locations, then a height restriction really isn't which one, you know, if you've got 200, 300 feet of frontage in front of a condo, then in the center of that, where there's no driveways, there's no reason you couldn't get higher.
Still,
long as
no, you
You
still
don't have
have,
setbacks on your, I mean, I don't.
you still have height restrictions, you have to see down the boulevard
Right,
both ways, so you're still only gonna be this tall.
okay,
you
okay.
know.
So,
Just do wildflowers and ground covers for that section. If people want shrubs or trees, they can put them in their yard.
how sophisticated do you want to get? Do you want to try to do zones? I mean,
I was thinking about the map sort of that,
No, just get out a list and they get to choose.
so to go back a step, so this is now instead of road easement beautification, you know, guidelines, sort of adopt your easement beautification. So do we?
And we'll provide a list of plants that are non-invasive.
Right, there's
that
no
are
agreements to adopt it. I mean, they.
right now.
No.
Other than the town says, yeah, you can put in what you want here as long as you take care of it and so on and so forth.
Yeah, this would be helpful to have the public works staff here because they would give us an understanding of how they would manage those that aren't adopted and those that are, and if they see one that's not adopted and it's not being cared for because maybe they're snowbirds, that will they water, you know, will they take care of that while it's sort of not, I mean, I think that's a fair question. Or is it just gonna die?
If,
And that's the town property, because the town wanted dead plants on, you know, along their road.
then they cover it up just like they were going to.
Dig it up, okay.
can you request that they come to our January meeting?
We can if we move this to finish this at the next meeting, as we had said last meeting, if we don't finish it, then we just take it up as agenda item 1 for the next
Finish
meeting.
it at the next meeting.
Okay, and so let's, is there any more that we can complete the framework? Or right now, I have, number 1, basically we provide a list of recommended plants. 2, those that don't choose those, who go to the website, and no invasives is a recommendation. 2 is a height restriction.
Mhm.
Do we want to come up with a number?
What are you
That's
saying,
not
2
our-
feet
that's
or
not our
whatever?
Okay, then we'll wait. So that should be, I'll put parentheses here, that could be the Public Works. They should be familiar maybe with what or actually if our liaison's here, you can probably comment on our, you know, whatever sightline and roadway conditions are for planting, right? Public Works or liaison. And is there any more in the framework outside of those two items that we want?
I can't think of any, that sounds good.
Okay, well then we'll leave it at that, and then we will invite the Public Works manager, director, whoever that may be, to Jason's meeting, I suppose, but I think there might be some changes to the next meeting, if that's what we choose to do. We'll agree under, section
Yeah,
12.
we can cover two birds with one stone and ask them about the percolation.
Right. So there it is. As soon as we spent that time prioritizing, that's going to leapfrog. I mean, that's how it works, so I'm okay with that. Okay, so shall we continue on?
Yes.
All right, so I think that ends the current items, and now members' items and reports. So Rose, let's go midstream here. You got, what do you have?
I had a couple and then I just added one on. Back from June of last year in 2022, there was that whole discussion about sand spurs at the south end, and it was a problem, and we had talked about not only the herbicide, but we'd also talked about forming a group of citizens to go out and pull sand spurs by hand.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's some consideration or not, if you wanna.
Backbreaking labor.
That's not fun.
Yes, and you
Yeah.
definitely need to wear gloves, and you have
Yes.
to get them before all the sand spurs form, that's the
But
trick.
it does make a
They're
difference.
so nasty.
Yeah, so I know, I don't know, this is,
Well, the problem with pulling them by hand is after the 15th, the birds come in and begin to nest, and the grass continues to grow from that period of time all the way through August. And so you can't have people out there continually pulling up the sand spurs because
Right.
the area's already covered with
Disturbs.
nest.
Yep.
Right. The herbicide, the EPA approved herbicide, it biodegrades in a short period of time,
Yeah.
but it prevents the sand spurs from growing during that period until August.
just, my original topics were just to kind of fill people in on the Estero Island Garden Club.